What you believe to be the truth about enlightenment is completely wrong. You have been taught that enlightenment is some distant goal in the future. You have thought that if you meditate enough, study deeply enough, or train your mind hard enough, one day you will reach it. But you are still waiting for that magical moment when everything fits perfectly. And what if I told you that moment will never come? What if the very thing you're looking for is the thing that keeps you from finding it? The mind loves the chase. It craves a problem to solve, a puzzle to solve, a goal to chase. That is the game it is best at. And then there is the ideology that says enlightenment is attainable, like a hidden treasure hidden in ancient scriptures or passed down by spiritual masters. But what is the truth? Enlightenment is not something you get. It is not in the future. You cannot get it because you have never lost it. There is nothing left to seek because you already are it. When there is nothing left to seek, what is left? That is what we are discovering today. No more mystery, no more ambiguity, no more complicated philosophies, just the naked truth, simple, pure. After today, you will no longer need any videos about enlightenment because the truth cannot be captured in words. The moment you try to describe it, you are lost. That is the paradox. The secret that the mind does not want to acknowledge. You want to understand it, to interpret it, to possess it as an idea or a doctrine. But enlightenment is not an ideology, a belief, or a set of principles. It is not found in books. It cannot be acquired through effort or practice. It does not come from becoming someone. And so the only thing to do is to stop looking. This information is not concealed inside the texts, and no guru, book, or instruction will ever be able to provide it to you. Because as soon as you put it into words, it transforms into something else, a representation of the actual thing at that very time. Explanations are sought after by the mind. It seeks a course of action, a framework, and a structure. The rules, the stages, and the methods are all things that it asks for. On the other hand, enlightenment is not something that can be contained within a method. The destination is not one that can be reached by according to a predetermined set of instructions. To add to your collection of spiritual experiences, this is not yet another accomplishment to add to your list. On the contrary, it is the annihilation of everything to which you believe you have access. Please consider it in this manner. Take into consideration the challenge of attempting to explain the flavor of water to someone who has never tried it. It is possible to discuss it, investigate its characteristics, and evaluate it in relation to other flavors, but none of these things will ever be the same as actually drinking it. This is the same as enlightenment. You are unable to comprehend it. You are unable to accomplish it. You are living through it. The experience is indescribable in its own right. Because of this, the most enlightened beings throughout history, including the greatest Zen masters, the wisest sages, and the most enlightened beings, have always pointed beyond language. The solutions were never distributed by them. Neither of them ever explained the concept of enlightenment to their pupils. They, on the other hand, broke their preconceived notions, deprived them of what they believed they knew, and left them with nothing. That is the most important thing. None of it. There is no concept of nothing. The lack of seeking, of needing, and of clinging onto definitions is not a theory about emptiness. Rather, it is an actual absence of these things. The instant that you let go of the urge to explain, to comprehend, and to grasp something, it is waiting for you. This is not something that is new or something that has recently appeared. Rather, it is something that has always been present. Pay attention to your own life. Have you ever had a time in which you were simply being without any thoughts, without any inner dialogue, and without any analysis? You might have experienced it while you were entirely engrossed in music when you were gazing at the sky, or when you were lost in the rhythm of waves smashing on the shore. At that same instant, there was also no you. It was simply a matter of experience, no division at all. There is no division. There is no way to separate you from the truth. When that moment came, yes, that was it. It was enlightenment to see that. However, the moment the mind names it, the moment it attempts to cling onto it, analyze it, or describe it, it is in the process of disappearing. To tell you the truth, it never left. Simply put, you have resumed your thinking, and this is where folks find themselves in a fix. They are looking for that experience. They endeavor to replicate it, to preserve it, and to sustain it for all of eternity. But this is nothing more than more searching, more grabbing, and more illusion. Just like a butterfly, the mind strives to seize the moment of enlightenment. However, the more tightly you grasp onto it, the more quickly it will slide away. Stopping your efforts to see it is the only way to actually perceive it. A number of realities are not suitable for platforms such as YouTube. Insights Academy is a free newsletter that we publish, and it is for this reason that we give exclusive insights. Additionally, for a limited time, you will be given the Kabbalion, which is a hermetic manuscript that provides information that the majority of people will never actually encounter. Sign up right away by clicking on the link provided below if you are serious about seeing beyond illusion. In response to this realization, the mind will battle. It will urge that you must accomplish something, learn something, or do something in order to be successful. You will be informed that enlightenment lies someplace in the future, that you are not ready, that you are not worthy, and that you are not capable of achieving it. However, what if that merely happened to be another illusion? Imagine for a moment that there was no waiting, no becoming, and no process. There was only this moment. You will realize that you were never truly separate from it in the first place, the moment you stop searching for it, and the moment you stop racing after it as if it were an object. But the majority of people find it difficult to accept this. Enlightenment is something that they wish to be unique, profound, and otherworldly. They desire for it to have the sensation of a transformation that will change their lives, a shift in the cosmos, and an explosion of divine realization. The mind, however, is capable of performing the greatest trick of all. It may convince you that enlightenment is something that is distinct from what already exists. It convinces you that the mundane is not sufficient, that you are not it right now, in this very moment as you are, and that being ordinary is not enough. However, you are. In every way, you were. The only thing that differs is whether or not you are able to notice it. This is the point at which we venture further. In the event that enlightenment is already present, already accessible, and already present in each and every instant, then why do individuals fail to recognize it? Why do they devote their entire lives to pursuing it, meditating for decades, and adhering to spiritual systems that promise eventual liberation? Uncomplicated is the response. The reason for this is that they are submerged in the delusion of seeker. There is something that is blocking people from seeing what is already there, and that is the mere act of searching. We are going to put an end to that delusion once and for all in the following phase of this discussion. The pursuit of enlightenment is the thing that prevents you from achieving it. When you begin to look for something, you immediately put some distance between yourself and the things that are already present. You have the belief that it is something that exists in the world, something that you will have to discover, acquire, or face in the future. On the other hand, that future never comes. When you are waiting for the day when everything comes together, you study more books, listen to more teachers, meditate for longer periods of time, and follow techniques. But the reality is that the very act of looking is what is preventing you from seeing what you are looking for. The mind is addicted to the pursuit of something. It thrives on the notion that there is something inadequate, that there is something that needs to be fixed, and that there is something that can be improved. The message conveys that you have not yet reached enlightenment. You will arrive at your destination, however, if you just continue to do this one thing, continue to follow this one practice, and sit in meditation for a great number of years longer. You, however, never do. Due to the fact that enlightenment is not something that can be attained. It is not the final destination on the road. The road itself is the issue. At the same time, you are moving away from it as long as you are walking in the direction of it. Give it some thought. Does the act of seeking ever bring you a sense of peace? When was the last time that you found what you were looking for through the never-ending pursuit? The more time you spend trying to get something, the more you are reminding yourself that you do not have it, that it is not here, and that it is not right now. But what if that turned out to be the most profound fallacy of them all? What would happen if the only thing that prevented you from realizing that you were never in any way different from enlightenment was the assumption that you are distinguishable from it? Consider your own personal experiences. Have you ever noticed that the moment you stop looking, stop analyzing, and stop searching, there is nothing but silence, even if it is only for a moment? That instant, just before the mind comes back into play and tells you that this is not the appropriate thing to do, it is the truth that that moment is. However, the mind is unable to accept it. It is going to argue that it must be more complicated, that it must be a profound mystical event, that it must be a shattering of reality, and that it must be an experience that is beyond words. Nevertheless, that is really another illusion. The final deception that the ego plays is to convince oneself that enlightenment is something that is more than what is occurring at this very now. Thus, halt. Put an end to the pursuit. Give up the analysis. Let go of your attempts to make sense of things. Simply be present in this moment. As of right moment, there is nothing lacking. Nothing comes next. There is no greater level, and there is no ultimate destination. It is over now. And the more you let go of the pressure to make it something unique, the more evident it will become to you. However, the majority of individuals are unable to accept this. They put an excessive amount of money in the journey. They have spent years, and in some cases decades, clinging to the hope that one day they will get to the top of the mountain. The idea that the summit was never real and that there was never a mountain to climb in the first place is something that they do not want to comprehend. This realization is quite disturbing, mainly due to the fact that it indicates that all they have been pursuing, everything they have been clinging to, including the books, the lessons, and the techniques, was nothing more than an illusion. However, it is only terrifying to the mind, often known as the ego, which is the true you. If you are beyond thought and beyond identity, then you have never been looking for something. Constantly observing and waiting, it has always been present. This reality will be resisted by the mind. It will put up a fight, debate, and look for a flaw somewhere in it. Due to the fact that if it accepts it, it will no longer have a job. That which keeps the mind in control is the act of seeking. You will continue to believe that you require it, and that if you do not have it, you will be lost. However, you won't be. You will be liberated. Nothing can be sought after, nothing can be gained, and nothing can be accomplished. Enlightenment is there, staring you in the face, the instant you recognize that you are no longer searching for it. Every time, it was. Now the only question that remains is whether or not you will stop. Are you going to let go? Do you intend to continue the pursuit, despite the fact that you are aware on some level that the item you are attempting to reach has been standing still the entire time? Do not be concerned if you have not yet noticed it. The deception is quite profound. Additionally, in the following section, we are going to take a look at one of the most common pitfalls that people fall into: the notion that meditation can be utilized as a means to achieve enlightenment. Meditation is not a means to a goal, as the truth of the matter is. The end itself is the end. And once you have finally grasped this concept, everything will be different. The practice of meditation does not lead to enlightenment. This is the falsehood that the majority of people never question. They have the belief that if they sit for a sufficient amount of time, if they practice the appropriate method, and if they clear their mind, they will finally arrive at a state of awakening that is considered to be the ultimate. However, the reality is that meditation is not a method that can be used to succeed. Realizing that there is no way out of the situation is the first step. At the very time that you sit with the notion that meditation is leading you to enlightenment, you have already lost the battle. Due to the fact that the concept itself is a separation. That very thought is looking for something. Consider how the majority of people meditate. They go into a seated position, close their eyes, and then begin to fight. They struggle against their ideas, attempting to stifle them and generating a state of mental calm via their own efforts. They are under the impression that if they can simply manage to repress all that comes up, they would be able to achieve a condition of absolute tranquility. On the other hand, that is not yoga. This is the control. When it comes to control, the ego is nothing more than a trick. You have already entered the realm of resistance the instant you make an effort to subdue your thoughts and make them quiet. In a situation where there was no struggle, you have already generated tension. Suppressing one's thoughts is not the goal of genuine meditation. Discovering that stillness is already present is the key to success. Right now, at this very now, there is complete silence. But because you are so preoccupied with the process of creating it, you fail to recognize it. Due to the fact that your mind is preoccupied with doing, attaining, and exerting effort, you are oblivious to it. Meditation, on the other hand, does not require any effort. There is surrender in meditation. This is not about putting an end to thoughts. It is about putting an end to the person who is attempting to put an end to thoughts. Try to picture the water. The ocean itself is never in a state of struggle, despite the fact that waves rise and fall, crash and disintegrate. Movement is not impeded by it in any way. It makes no effort to maintain the waves at a lower level. This merely permits. Despite the fact that the waves come and go, the water continues to be tranquil beneath them. Your ideas are the same as everyone else's. They go up, they go down, and they inevitably vanish. It is not the thoughts that are the issue. This is a problem since you are of the opinion that they should not be present. The instant that you stop rejecting them, the instant that you let them come and go without clinging to them or pushing them away, you will come to the realization that the quiet that you were seeking was never ever absent. Even when there was a lot of noise and effort being put in, it was always there. Although Bodhidharma, the founder of Zen, sat facing a wall for 9 years, he did not seek to achieve anything or arrive at a final state. Rather, he sat with the intention of simply being. In its purest form, this is the essence of meditation, not doing anything but sitting, breathing, and simply existing, just this, without any attempts, methods, or expectations of any kind. However, such response does not sit well with the mind. It desires to be used in some way. It requires a detailed instruction manual. Rules, procedures, and systems are what it seeks. On the other hand, the reality is that the instant you start treating meditation as a method, you are already behind. Due to the fact that meditation is not about doing, what's at stake is undoing. It is about overcoming the delusion that there is something that needs to be fixed, something that needs to be changed, or something that needs to be improved. At this very moment, wherever you are, take a deep breath, the only one. Have no control over it. Avoid interfering with it. Simply allow it to take place. And at that precise moment, keep this in mind. It is not lacking anything. There should be no deviation from the norm. It is a form of meditation, as the very nature of reality itself, rather than as a method or a way of life. The reason that people seek out meditation techniques is because they believe they require them. They have the illusion that they are lacking, unworthy, and not prepared. They are of the opinion that they require further time, more practice, and more discipline. Let's say, however, that none of that were true. Imagine for a moment that the only thing that was preventing you from reaching enlightenment was the stubborn conviction that you were not already there. But the mind will fight against this. It is going to argue. It is going to make an effort to maintain both effort and difficulty, as well as the notion that there is more work that needs to be done. Nevertheless, that is really another illusion. After you have gained an understanding of it, meditation will no longer be something you simply do. Your identity is shaped by it. This transforms into life itself. There is, however, an even more profound deception that lies behind all of this: the delusion of one's own identity. For the simple reason that if there is no one meditating, then who is there to provoke awakening? Over the course of the following section, we are going to eliminate the last barrier, the conviction that you really do have a distinct self at all. In addition, everything will be different once that illusion is destroyed. Just who are you? We are not interested in your name, your history, or your thoughts. Above and beyond all of that, who are you? In the event that you remove all that you consider yourself to be, what components are left? An attempt will be made by the mind to respond with labels, memories, and thoughts. It is going to say, I am me. I'm the one in question. The life, the tale, and the identity that I have are all mine. But is that you on the other end? Alternatively, is it merely another construct, an additional delusion? From the time you were born, you were given a name, a history, and a collection of beliefs about who you are as an individual. You have been instructed in who you are, what you ought to think, and what you ought to be afraid of. The passage of time has resulted in those concepts becoming so firmly established that they now feel like realities. However, this is not to be believed. To put it another way, they are conditioning, a lifetime of programming that shapes the way you perceive yourself. This is where the trap lies. You make the assumption that these ideas and beliefs are that of yourself since you identify with them. However, this is not the case. They consist of fleeting events, mental habits, and narratives that have been taught. There is no distinction between them and clouds that are moving through the sky. Despite this, you continue to cling to them as if they are you. Before you were given a name, before you were able to communicate with others, and before you even thought. Prior to being instructed on what to believe, who were you previously? There is a peculiar occurrence that takes place if you remain with this question without making any attempt to find a solution. It is true that the more you search for the self, the less you discover. You are unable to get any of the identities that you have attempted to acquire. According to you, I am my body. Yet the body undergoes change. Cells must perish and then regenerate. And the person you were the day before is not the same person you are today. They say that I am my own mind. The thoughts, however, come and go. Some feelings change. Changes in perspective occur. Even if the self were real, it would remain unchanged and unchanging forever. But there is nothing about you that remains the same. Therefore, where exactly is this I that you consider yourself to be? The major Zen teachers were aware of this fact. They would ask their students to demonstrate their abilities to them. No one was able to accomplish it. For the reason that the instant you make an effort to point to the self, you become aware that there is nothing there. Nothing but inertia. Only awareness, the experience of seeing all of this take place. It is the thoughts, the feelings, and the experiences that come into being and then vanish. But the witness is still present. This is the point at when the illusion is shattered. If the ego does not exist, then who is the one who suffers? Who is looking for enlightenment? To whom is it possible to grant freedom? Due to the fact that you believe you are someone, suffering is a reality. You are of the opinion that there is a part of you that must be safeguarded, a version of you that is susceptible to suffering. a you that is capable of win, lose, prosper, and fail. On the other hand, if the self is an illusion, then what needs to be protected? What exactly is there to lose? The fact of the matter is that this one incorrect assumption is the source of all sorrow, fear, and struggle, a tendency to identify with things that are fleeting rather than things that are eternal. What exactly is without end, and not you as an individual, neither you as a brain nor as a body? The consciousness that is able to perceive everything is what is eternal. The awareness that is not distinct from anything else, for the simple reason that it is all that is. What would you have left if you stopped thinking and stopped trying to find your identity right now? No vacuum at all. The mind is afraid of nothingness, yet it is not nothingness, but the space. There is no sound. Presence is essential, the very same presence that has always been present, which is the driving force behind each and every experience and moment. What you are is exactly this. It is not a person. There is no name. This is not a collection of your thoughts. On the other hand, the awareness that is devoid of shape and boundaries, in which everything appears and disappears. Moreover, when this is realized, the agony is over. Not because life is perfected to perfection, not due to the fact that you cease to experience pain, but because the person who is suffering was never a real person in the first place. As soon as the game began, it was already rigged. You were attempting to escape something that had never been seen before. You were attempting to rouse someone who had never been able to fall asleep. This discovery, however, is just the beginning of things. In the minds of many people, enlightenment is synonymous with liberation from the world. Take a break from your typical routine, a significant change in character. Nevertheless, that is really another illusion, as a result of the fact that nothing changes after enlightenment. Still, everything is subject to change. And in the following section, we will dissect what life is like after the illusion of the self has been dismantled and examined. Given that this is the most important secret, get some water and chop some wood before you reach enlightenment. Once you have attained enlightenment, you should carry water and chop wood. There is, however, no longer any opposition. It was a breeze. In its purest form, life is what it is. Get some water and chop some wood before you reach enlightenment. Once you have attained enlightenment, you should carry water and chop wood. There is no adjustment. Despite this, everything else does. One of the most common misconceptions about enlightenment is that it may alter the nature of life and change it into something different. That once you have awakened, you will go through the world with a radiant presence, unaffected by the anguish that is associated with human existence, and floating above the immaterialities of human existence. On the other hand, the reality is much less dramatic, much more understated, and much more profound. Life goes on even though its outward appearance has not changed. Every single one of the tasks, responsibilities, and worlds are exactly the same. However, the way in which you perceive it and the way in which you experience it does not differ at all. The mind was the filter through which everything was filtered before. Each and every event was evaluated, categorized, and rated. Each and every moment was thought of in reference to the self, including what it meant for you, how it impacted you, and whether or not it brought you pleasure or misery. The mind generated resistance, transforming seemingly insignificant occurrences into challenges. Tea was never the only beverage you consumed. You were immersed in your own thoughts, weighing the events of the day, reliving the past, and making plans for the future. It was never just a matter of you strolling along the street. When you were wrapped up in judgment, you were comparing yourself to other people and chasing after some version of yourself that had never come to an end. You were never genuinely present in this moment, since every moment was a means to an end. However, after attaining awareness, there is nothing else but this. There will be no more stories, no more searching, and no more confrontation. Taking a cup of tea is the same as drinking tea. Walking is the same thing as walking. It is possible that the mind continues to generate thoughts, but these thoughts are no longer taken as seriously. You might think of them like clouds moving through the sky. They come and go. But there is no disturbance to the sky itself. Exactly this is the distinction. The idea is not that you cease thinking or that you transform into a robotic person that is removed from the world around you. Rather, it is that you no longer cling to the oscillations of the mind. There is no longer the illusion of a self searching for something more, attempting to develop themselves, or trying to exert control over themselves. Many individuals have a misunderstanding about this. They have the misconception that enlightenment is a means of escaping life, from feelings, and from difficulties. But time does not stand still. Individuals will continue to come and leave. There will still be instances of pain. There will always be an element of chaos, unpredictability, and even brutality in the world. Not a single one of it sticks. It does not leave any trace behind, due to the fact that the person who used to endure suffering is no longer believed in. At the same time that the waves continue to rise and fall, the ocean remains unchanged. There is no longer a requirement to compete with the truth. There is no need to coerce anything into being not the same as it already is. Whatever comes up will come up. Whatever is lost once and for all. One thing that has changed is that there is no longer anyone who is fighting against it, and no one who wants life to be any other way. It is here that the contradiction lies. This does not make life boring or devoid of meaning. The result is that it is more vivid, more alive, and more real than it has ever been before. In the absence of the continual noise of the mind and the filter of the self, each and every instant is perceived with complete and utter clarity. The commonplace is elevated to the exceptional. The sensation of breath going in and out, the sound of rain hitting a window, and the sound of a leaf falling from a tree are all soothing sounds. There is no need to add any adornment to any of these because they are already complete. There is not a single thing that is lacking or missing. The very things that were once disregarded as being unimportant suddenly reveal themselves to be the very fabric of existence, sparkling with a quiet brilliance that was always there but was never observed. Nevertheless, if you were to examine someone who has recently come to this realization, you might not see any changes in them at all. They are still living, still working, still loving, still laughing, and still crying. They are able to experience the complete spectrum of human emotions, yet they do not feel connection to anything or attachment to the false weight of identity. The feeling of anger is fleeting and does not last over time. Despite the fact that it comes and goes, sadness does not leave any kind of mark. Joy is present, but it is no longer something to seek out or something to cling to out of preoccupation with the possibility that it will be lost. It is life that flows through them, but they do not make any attempt to grasp it or to exert any control over it. And as a result of this, they are uncomplicated. On the other hand, individuals do not anticipate having this kind of liberty. They are not experiencing the profound spiritual illumination that was promised to them. The huge change that they had envisioned is not what actually occurred. The fireworks, the cosmic visions, and the supernatural insights are not what he is talking about. This is life, in its purest form, without any distortion of the mind or delusion of the self. It is simply life as it is. Because it is so straightforward, the majority of people will fail to notice it. They are going to keep looking for something more, because they are under the impression that enlightenment must be something more, something that goes beyond. However, this is the greatest trick of the mind, the final deceit, the notion that what is already present is not sufficient. However, it is the case. At all times, it has been. What's more, Once you see it, you can never take it back. Despite the fact that the world has not changed, you are no longer associated with it. You have liberated yourself from the confines of the stories that your mind tells you, and you are no longer ensnared in the never-ending fight of becoming. No longer is there a destination, no longer is there a goal, and there is no longer anything that can be accomplished. Just this is all there is. And yet, even after hearing all of this, even after coming to the realization that enlightenment is nothing more than perceiving reality without illusion, many people will still question, how do I get there? The very question it poses sheds light on the delusion that is still in play. The illusion that you were ever distinct from it in the first place is the final falsehood that we will uncover in the following section. This is the greatest deceit of all the lies that we will disclose. Neither of you ever existed apart. The fallacy that enlightenment is something that can be attained, that it is something that is external to you, that it is something that is far away, and that it is something that is concealed behind years of work, effort, or discipline is the greatest illusion and the most persistent deceit. On the other hand, the reality is that you were never separated from it, not even for a single second. The concept that you weren't already, it was the one thing that ever made it appear to be a more distant possibility. You have been conditioned to believe in separation from the time you were a child. You have been taught that there is a you and there is the world, that there is an observer and there is what is being seen, that there is a thinker and there are thoughts. There is a separation between you and the world. To be more specific, where exactly is the boundary? The question is, where do you stop and the world start? At this very moment, while you read these words, do you feel as though there is a boundary between you and the experience of reading? Or does there happen to be nothing but reading, just this, and nothing but experience unfolding moment by moment? The mind is adamant that you are distinct apart from it. Identities, forms, names, and narratives are all things that it clings to. It conveys the information that you were born, that you have a history, and that you are a person who is transitioning through time and traveling towards a future that you have pictured. It is a delusion that time itself exists. Rather of traveling through time, you are always present in this moment. However, neither the past nor the future exists any place other than in the present moment. The past is only a recollection and the future is merely an idea. Every single thing that you have ever known and every single thing that you have ever experienced was only ever happening right now. This reality, however, is resisted by the intellect, due to the fact that if there is no history and no future, then what is there for the self to cling to during this time? The mind is afraid of the present moment because of this reason. It is utterly terrorized by it. Because there is no use for tales, no use for identity, and no use for all of the illusions that the self has constructed, the present moment is not useful. There is a beginning of the dissolution of the self the instant you completely yield to this. Not through some supernatural and dramatic eruption, but rather through a peaceful revelation, similar to how a dream fades away as one wakes up. There is no need for you to engage in conflict with it. It is not necessary for you to battle. It is sufficient for you to recognize that the self was never a real thing to begin with. On the other hand, people spend their entire lives searching for something that they have never, ever lost. They look for enlightenment in books, in teachers, and in procedures, but they never realize that the exact thing they are looking for is the very thing that they are looking for the first place. That there is no you who will awaken in this moment. Only the process of awakening itself exists. Now is the time to pause for a second. Take a look at the experiences you just had. It is not your thoughts on it, nor is it the commentary that your mind makes on it. Right now, right here, and right now only. Have we overlooked anything? Is there anything that might be missing? Alternatively, is the concept of incompleteness itself nothing more than a notion, a further type of illusion? Because of this, Zen masters would not answer questions about enlightenment when they were asked to define it. There are a number of reasons why someone would laugh, point, or simply leave, due to the fact that everything they said would be transformed into a new idea, something that the mind would have to comprehend. However, the mind is incapable of comprehending this. If it is, then it must be. There is no other option but to give in to what has always been true. And that brings us to the last secret. One does not have something to do. There is nothing that needs to be altered. There is nothing to form. The most significant deception was the idea that you were ever different from this. It was necessary for you to transform into something else. However, you do not. You have never done so. In spite of this, the illusion of seeking is rather powerful. It's possible that the mind is whispering even now, but what should I do next? Having this insight, how do I spend my life? This question is the last obstacle that stands in the way. Furthermore, in the following section, we shall reveal it for what it truly is. Because, in all honesty, there is no subsequent event. There is no time in the future when you will be able to obtain it. There is only the present moment. When this is realized, the cycle of control, seeking, and illusion is ultimately broken, and the cycle is no longer continued. This is the final step. One is desired by the mind. Continually, it does. It is not willing to let go of the notion that something must follow this scenario. Therefore, there must be a further step. One more lesson to hear. Another approach that should be taken. In any case, that is the ultimate illusion. The belief that there is a desire for something more is what prevents you from coming to the realization that there was never anything else. The only reason the cycle of seeking perpetuates itself is because you continue to feed it. The mind continues to convince you that enlightenment lies someplace in the future, and you continue to believe it. This is just one more revelation away from being realized. But how is it possible for something to exist in the future if the only thing that exists in reality is the present moment? By doing so, the trap is able to maintain its grip. During the course of the spiritual search, one develops an identity. An awakening is something that people pursue for years, decades, and even lives, under the impression that they are making progress towards something. However, growth is really an illusion. It is impossible to separate yourself from the world around you. It was never the case. At the very instant that you have the conviction that you are making progress toward the truth, you have already separated yourself from it. You have already accepted the notion that you are something distinct from other people that you are. Someone or something lacking. Moreover, as long as you continue to hold that belief, the hunt will never be over. But if you take a break, what will happen? Without a doubt, for a little period of time, what would happen if you stopped striving to become anything whatsoever? Stop making an effort to achieve anything? Have you given up trying to figure out anything? What are the consequences of simply allowing everything to remain in its current state, without the need to make any adjustments, without deciding if it is correct or incorrect? Is there no part of it that you are resisting? It is the truth that that moment is. That particular moment is the one that has been ignored time and time again, because it signifies the conclusion of the search. People want to avoid coming to this knowledge. This is the conclusion of the tale. It was the conclusion of everything that they believed they were. The act of letting go of any and all notions on what life ought to be, what enlightenment ought to be, and what they ought to be is required. Furthermore, the mind is resistant to this because if it were to be devoid of the continuous motion and the never-ending process of searching, what would be left? When it comes to the ego, the answer is terrifying. This is the only thing. I am right here. A moment ago, you will be told by your thinking that this is not sufficient, that this is going to be too easy. There must be something that you are overlooking. What if, however, the voice was telling a lie? Imagine if this was sufficient at all times. Imagine for a moment that enlightenment was never about becoming anything, but rather about arriving to the realization that there was never what was lacking, that you are already at home, and the only thing that ever was able to make it appear different was the idea that you were not. People who are lost in their search are essential to the system's survival. Those individuals who are consistently striving to become something, better something, or accomplish something are beneficial to the international community. You will continue to consume, you will continue to be dependent, and you will continue to be convinced that happiness is always just out of reach. And if you are unable to see this clearly, you will spend the entirety of your life looking for something that you already possess, with the expectation that sometime in the future, something that is external to you would eventually complete you. However, it will not. To put it simply, you already are. However, the majority of people will never be able to see the truth. The majority of people will continue to go in circles, chasing their own shadow and maintaining the belief that the next book, the next teacher, or the next exercise will ultimately provide them with what they are looking for. However, those who are prepared, those who are willing to pause, those who are willing to gaze, and those who are willing to see properly are the ones who are able to break free. For as long as you continue to believe in it, the illusion will only continue. It is only if you continue to run that the cycle of seeking will have any strength. However, you are not required to do so. You have never done so. At the time that you come to a halt, the moment that you recognize the deceit, everything comes to an end. All that is left is this, which is straightforward, uncomplicated, and unrestricted. But even at this moment, the mind might be whispering, but what does this imply for the rest of my life? From this point forward, how should I conduct my life? That is the last inquiry, the last thread of attachment that has been made. In the following section, we will finally put an end to it once and for all, due to the fact that after attaining enlightenment, life continues in the same manner as it did before. You are no longer constrained by it, which is the big difference. What takes place at this moment? It is the mind's desire to learn. As a replacement for the one that has just fallen apart, it is looking for a new purpose, a new direction, and a new aim. What should I do with my life if there is nothing to look for? That is the question that it poses. How am I supposed to live now that I have seen through the illusion? That query is the very last vestige of the false ego that will ever be found. The conviction that life must go beyond merely existing in order to have a guiding purpose. Rather from being something that comes about simply and effortlessly, when you stop attempting to force reality into a mold, success, purpose, and fulfillment must be something that you work toward achieving. The majority of people spend their entire lives looking for a purpose, as if it were something that was external to them, something that was waiting for them. They are under the impression that they must discover their passion, create something truly remarkable, and leave a legacy. The question is, what exactly is all of that? Something that is merely another layer of identity, something that is just another story, and anything that the mind clings to in order to evade the simplicity of being. It is nothing more than an additional manifestation of the same delusion that kept people searching for enlightenment in the first place. The concept of achievement, significance, and discovering one's true path are all examples of this illusion. However, a purpose is not necessary for living. In this case, a big story is not required. It is already finished and finished in its entirety. Life will continue even if the illusion of desire is no longer present, but it is no longer a cost. Then you come to. You consume food. You are employed. You speak with other individuals. The great burden of anticipation, however, is no longer present. It is no longer the case that you are attempting to demonstrate something, that you are no longer evaluating your value based on external criteria, and that you are no longer striving to transcend what you already are. The notion that you have to become anything or that you have to achieve something meaningful is a fallacy that should be abandoned. And within that space, Life unfolds without any effort, in a natural way, and without any interruption. On the other hand, this is not what people prefer to hear. The message that they are looking for is that enlightenment will provide them with complete clarity, a new mission, and a divine purpose that will make everything feel like it is essential. But what if the experience of living does not have to be significant? But what if it is sufficient in its current state? Undoubtedly, this is the most liberating. A state of being in which one does not require life to be anything other than what it normally is. You cannot escape the world once you have achieved enlightenment. At no point do you transform into a figure that is aloof and hovering above reality. You continue to exist. You continue to take action. You are still doing so. You are no longer confined by it at this point. There is no longer a false ego that is attached to outcomes, that is afraid of failing, and that is in need of affirmation. To put it simply, you simply carry out the tasks that are required of you, moment by moment, without resistance or attachment. It is possible that some individuals will go on to create, develop, or teach. It's possible that some people simply live under the radar. In spite of this, neither of the two options is superior or inferior because there is no longer a requirement to evaluate, compare, or explain one's existence. This is the first moment when life is lived without any efforts being made. The reason for this is not that difficulties do not occur, but rather that they are no longer personal. Failure and success lose their hold on a person since there is no longer any self to accept credit or blame for their actions. You have liberated yourself from the confines of the mind's never-ending search for significance. Furthermore, when one is liberated, life takes on a beauty that has always been present but has never been noticed. The majority of people will never progress to this phase, not because it is challenging, but rather because it is overly easy to understand. The thought that there is nothing to be found is something that the ego is unable to accept. Enlightenment will continue to be sought after, and it will continue to be attempted to be transformed into something big, something unique, and something that demands years of labor. Those who are truly perceptive, however, are aware that there is nothing to be done, nothing to be fixed, and nothing to be accomplished. There is only this, and life is simply as it is. However, despite everything that has been taught up until this point, the mind may still choose to oppose. It is key that it is still looking for anything to cling to, some last-minute reassurance. This is the reason why, before we come to a finish, there is one more thing to say, one more illusion that needs to be dispelled. And once it is gone, there will be nothing left to question, nothing left to seek. There will be nothing but reality, with everything just as it is. I have nothing else to say at this point, and it is the reality. This is something that the mind defies to acknowledge. As if it were a prize at the end of a lengthy trip, it seeks one final understanding, one final insight, and one ultimate conclusion that brings everything together and brings about enlightenment. As a result, there is no award. One does not have to travel. There is nothing else at this very now exactly as it is. The fact that there was never anything to find is one of the most important secrets. There is no awakening out there waiting in the distance, and there is no greater state just beyond reach. There was an illusion that kept you confined, and that illusion was the basic idea that you were ever apart from the reality. Neither you nor enlightenment can be attained. There is no you to awaken. Throughout the entire process, the seeking was constantly taking place within something that had never required the desire to seek anymore. The mind will raise objections. It is going to fight against this, argue against it, and make an effort to dismantle it using logic. Due to the fact that this response does not fulfill it, it desires a philosophy that it can carry, study, and discuss, as well as complexity and depth. Nevertheless, enlightenment is not a concept. A belief is not what it is. There is no such thing as an experience. This is the unadulterated version of reality. For reality to exist, it does not require your authorization to do so. There is no requirement for your comprehension, validation, or analysis of it. Before you was even aware of it, it was already present. And even after all thoughts have been forgotten, it will continue to exist. To put it simply, this very instant is it. Whatever location you may be in, it does not matter what you are doing, it is over now. The following step is not available. You are not waiting for a more profound truth. As of now, there is no method that can finally unlock it. If you don't see it, then you don't see it. And if you don't, it's only because your mind is still looking for anything else than what is already present in this moment. This is unacceptable to the vast majority of people. These words will be heard by them, and they will reject them. In the future, they will go back to searching, to attempting, and to grasping for something that they perceive is lacking. That is not a problem. This is a normal aspect of the game. You will, however, come to a halt if you are actually prepared and ready. At this very moment. Not going to happen tomorrow. It is not later. However, after further practice, right now, simply because there is no other option available. It was never the case. If this is something that you comprehend, and if you are able to realize it, then the hunt is finished. There is no change in the way life is going. However, there is no longer any struggle. There is no more resistance. There is no need to add meaning beyond what is. The false self that tried to control, to differentiate, to shape everything into an image of the future, no longer holds sway. Everything simply is. And despite this truth being laid bare, most people after watching this video will continue their search. They will set out again, looking for something bigger, higher, better. But there will be a few who understand. For those people, everything will change, not because the outside world has changed, but because they no longer need the world to change. They will realize that they have never strayed from the truth. They have never been left in the dark. The only problem, always, is the mind, with its never-ending game of creating problems and then solving them. But as soon as you break free from that cycle, all that was once a burden falls away. And the only thing left is the truth. It's always there, as solid as it ever was. You don't have to believe it. You don't have to memorize it or repeat it like a mantra. You just have to see it. And when you see it, really see it, this is the last video you'll ever need on enlightenment. Because after that, there's nothing more to look for. Few people will ever understand what words cannot express. And that's why Insights Academy was created, for those who are truly willing to look deeper, beyond the surface, beyond the limits of what can be said publicly. Sign up today to receive the Kybalion, Kiyin, a mystical text that has inspired seekers of truth for centuries. Don't miss it. And if you feel this video touch something in you, don't hesitate to leave a comment below.